Okay, hi there, everybody. My name is Dr. Marcella Ward, and I'm what's called the Tinsley Outreach Fellow at Worcester College in Oxford. That means that I have a kind of double role. Half of me is a researcher. I'm a fellow of the college. My field is classics. I work broadly on Greek tragedy and on the long history of Greek tragedy into the modern world. I'm also the outreach fellow bit of my title also means that it's my job to talk to young people who are thinking about going into higher education. I have a particular responsibility for those who are underrepresented in higher education. You probably already know that certain groups of people are less likely to go on to university, and particularly to highly selective universities like Oxford and Cambridge than others. So it's my job to support those people in their applications, but also to ensure that everybody from whatever background they're from is able to thrive once they arrive in Oxford. Under normal circumstances, I would be one of the first people you would meet when you cross the threshold of Worcester College on the open day, along with my colleague Claire, who's the Access and Admissions Officer, who you'll also have a chance to meet today if you're visiting us on the virtual open day. But this year, obviously, everything is a little bit different. We're really disappointed not to be able to welcome you in person to Worcester and to Oxford more generally. We're disappointed because Worcester is just an absolutely beautiful place to be, and it's a beautiful college to work in and to walk around and to be able to have a look at. Our students are disappointed that they won't be able to meet you for themselves and tell you about their experiences, but we're going to do the best that we can to answer all of your questions, to provide some of that open day experience virtually. So if you are watching this as part of our virtual open day, I'm going to talk now for about half an hour. I'll try and keep it relatively short, and then you'll be able to ask any questions that you've got to me in the live chat afterwards. You also, between 9 and 5 for the rest of the day, will be able to speak to our student ambassadors, and my colleague Claire, who's our Access and Admissions Officer, will also be available for you to speak to. If you're catching up on this video via our YouTube channel after the open day itself, you obviously won't be able to speak to us live on a video chat, but you will be able to email us. Our email address is admissions@worc.ox.ac.uk. I'll make sure that's in the description of the video as well. And we're always really happy to hear from prospective applicants, to hear from people who are thinking about university, and to give whatever advice we can give and tell you as much as we can about what it's really like to study here. So I know that lots of you will have all sorts of questions about admissions, how it works, why you apply, how you apply, what sorts of information you need to tell us and tell our admitting tutors. And I'll have plenty of time to take questions about that if you'd like to ask them. But what I'm going to focus on for the first sort of half an hour here in this presentation is more the question of why you would want to apply. So you might be sitting here watching this presentation thinking, oh, I've always wanted to go to Oxford University, so I know why I want to apply, in which case that's fine. I hope this will still be useful for you, because I hope that you'll still learn some things that you didn't know about studying at Oxford, or studying in particular at Worcester College. But it's more likely that you're somewhere on the fence, right? That at this point in the year, you might have an idea of what subject you want to study. You might have looked at some universities that offer your subject, but you might not be, depending on what stage you're at in your education, you might not be absolutely sure of where you want to study. And that's absolutely okay. And if you speak to our student ambassadors, plenty of them will tell you that they didn't make that decision until relatively late. So you're doing the right thing, which is you're coming here, you're having a look online, you're trying to get more information. And we know that that's harder this year than it's really ever been. That information that you would normally get on an open day, you'd normally be able to go and visit the universities. And because of the coronavirus, obviously, you haven't been able to. So we're going to do the best that we can to give you that information, both over the next half an hour and in the resources that we make available via our college YouTube channel, via our college website, and via the various social media options that we work through as well. So Twitter and Instagram are the main ones that we at Worcester use. So why choose Oxford then? You've probably heard all sorts of things about Oxford. Most people have. Most people have picked up the various myths that seem to fly around in the press at all times of the year. People who I speak to have usually heard that Oxford is only for posh people. They've usually heard that it's only for very rich people. They've usually heard that it's not for people like them. I hear that a lot. And the first thing to say is that all of those things are completely untrue. Oxford is really a place for anybody who has a real passion for their subject. I think that's really the most important thing, and wants to study it in the particular kinds of ways that we teach it. And I'll talk a little bit about what some of those kinds of ways are in a moment. So what do you get at Oxford then? Well, undoubtedly you get an exceptional education. You're taught by absolute experts in your field. You're taught by people who are really sort of world leaders in what they do and in the subjects that they study. There's also something very special about the particular way that we teach, the particular kind of education that we offer here. You probably know by now that most universities teach using some variant on the idea of lectures. So that's kind of large group teaching. And lectures tend to be more one-sided kinds of teaching. It tends to be someone is at the front of the room, they talk, the students listen, they make notes. There is often the opportunity to ask questions at the end, but it's not the most collaborative approach to teaching. It's more about imparting information. So that's lectures. Lots of universities also teach using seminars. So seminars are kind of smaller group teaching. At Oxford, a seminar is usually anywhere between kind of 8 and 15 or so people, depending on the size of the course. It can be bigger or smaller than that. But seminars usually require some kind of preparation work in advance. And they are usually about discussion, between everybody in the group. They're led by a tutor, but they're also about learning from peers. At Oxford, like Cambridge and a very small number of other universities, we also teach using the kind of main special bit about our teaching is something that we call the tutorial system. And the tutorial system is basically really, really small group teaching. It's teaching that might be one student and one tutor. It might be one tutor and 2 students. It's not usually more than 3 students. So this is really small group teaching, and it's really personalized teaching, because your tutorial is what enables you to really focus on the bits of the topic you're looking at that you found the most interesting, but also because it's so personalized, it also allows you to ask for more help if you need it. So, if you've heard something in a lecture that perhaps you've not quite understood, the tutorial is your opportunity to ask the questions that you might not ask in a lecture in front of loads and loads of other people, but because you have this kind of personalized pedagogical relationship with your tutor, you're able to ask those questions and to go back over material if you need to. You usually have to do some kind of preparation work for a tutorial. So if you're a student in a humanities subject, that's likely to be an essay that you write in advance, and then you'll discuss that essay with your tutor. They might ask you to go back over some of your points. They might offer you new information and ask you to develop the thinking that you've done in your essay. They might ask you about something further, so something you haven't written about in your essay. But it's based around, the tutorial will be based around a particular topic and a particular piece of work that you've done. If you're a sciences student or a maths student, it's more likely to be a problem sheet that you've been asked to work through than an essay. And I'll talk a little bit more in a few minutes about the differences between the kinds of work that humanities students usually do and the kinds of work that sciences students usually do, although there is obviously some overlap. What else do you get at Oxford then? Well, you get a lifetime of opportunity, and we mean that both whilst you're here. So Oxford is really a place that is about supporting all of its students to have access to opportunities, to thrive, to be able to do what they want to do at university, right? To follow up academically on what interests them, also in terms of their extracurricular life, to really develop the kinds of skills that they're interested in developing. But we also mean that in terms of careers, and lots of you might be sitting watching this video thinking that careers are something that really matter to you. Perhaps key to your decision to go to university is access to a particular job or a particular kind of job. And Oxford is really a place that supports the career aspirations of its students. We do that via something called the Careers Service, which is a kind of specialist service that will put you into contact with different employers. They'll also do really practical things like look at your cover letters, give you advice on your CV, talk to you about different kinds of jobs that might be available to you. So that's a service that's really set up to support Oxford students and Oxford graduates in their journey onto the careers they want to be in. It's also, what for me is really exciting about the career service is that it's support that remains with you for the rest of your life. So you will always have that support. So once you've left Oxford, you'll always be able to have access to those opportunities, to be able to come back for that advice, say if you decide to have a career change, which many people do in their kind of increasingly portfolio careers, so careers that might be made up of different kinds of opportunities and different kinds of jobs. So that's something that lots of our graduates really make use of for the rest of their lifetime. I've already said that the tutorial system offers you a kind of personalized learning. It's really learning that's structured around you, both in terms of your particular interests in the subject, but also in terms of your development, right? Your tutors, because they work with you in such a personalized way, they're really interested in you and how you're developing in your knowledge of the subject. Oxford is also a place that has world-class resources and facilities, more than 100 libraries, and more than 1,500 laboratories. So whatever it is that you need to study your subject to the highest level, you'll find that it's here, right? A lot of our students find, even if they do a kind of book-heavy course, a humanities course, let's say they do a literature course like English or something, even those students will often find that they don't need to buy a book because so many of the books are available in the libraries. And libraries exist at college level, at departmental level, and there are also kind of university libraries, the most famous of which being the Bodleian Library. But I'll talk a little bit in a moment about those differences. So what is a college and what is a department, and how does the university relate to those things? Because that's sometimes a little bit opaque to people who aren't yet within the system. But there are really huge amounts of resources and really exciting kind of cutting edge resources available to you to do the work that you're really interested in doing while you're here. Our teaching is also research-led. So what that means is that you're taught by an expert in that subject, not just in your subject more generally, but you're taught by somebody who researches and who is interested in the most cutting-edge research in the particular topic that you're looking at. And I think that's what accounts for Oxford's reputation for this really high-quality research-led teaching. So Oxford is also a place that is hugely supportive and hugely welcoming. I said at the beginning of my presentation that people often come to Oxford or think about Oxford with certain kinds of myths in mind, the most pernicious of which I think is that Oxford is only for certain kinds of people. And if there was one myth that I could sort of wipe from the face of thinking about higher education, it would be that one, because once you arrive at Oxford, you will find that you'll meet people from all kinds of backgrounds here, who've studied at all different kinds of schools, and who really want to share this common interest in learning with you. So you'll find that it is an environment that is hugely supportive and hugely welcoming to people from all different kinds of backgrounds. So Oxford also, you need to sort of imagine in your mind this kind of big world-class international university that also divides itself into these smaller communities, right? And we call those communities colleges. A college is a physical space. It's unfortunately not a physical space that you've been able to visit today, but the colleges all are physical spaces. And a lot of the pictures in this presentation are pictures of Worcester College. But it's also a community of people. So it's a group of students who are attached to a particular college. It's a group of tutors. It's also a group of other kinds of staff, for instance, welfare support staff, and the academic office team, who are the people who will organize a lot of your teaching and a lot of your exams. So it's a community, yeah? It's an academic community, but it's also a social community. You'll often find that your college is where you meet your first friends, for instance, because they're the people who maybe live on the corridor where you live. You'll often live in your college. At Worcester, you can live in the college for all 3 years of your degree, if you're doing a 3-year degree. At other colleges, sometimes that's a little bit different. Sometimes you have to live out in private rented accommodation for 1 or more years. But you'll usually spend at least some time living kind of within the college itself, whichever college you go to. It's also the nature of the college that means that we're able to provide that personalized teaching and also pastoral care, right? So your college will often have particular welfare staff. At Worcester, we have a specific student welfare officer as well as a kind of broader welfare team. So a college is also a place that's set up to take care of you and to help you in that transition to university life, which I think a lot of people are sometimes a bit nervous about. But colleges are places that are really set up to be able to help you through that. Your college will also often provide you with things like bursaries, things like financial aid. So financial support, we have some other resources about that and precisely how it works elsewhere on our YouTube channel. So might be worth you taking a look at those. But just quickly to explain then that financial support is something that is provided in the form of bursaries by the university. And most of those bursaries are automatic. So most of them, when you apply for your student loan, you'll be automatically considered for means-tested bursaries. And about 1 in 4 Oxford students are in receipt of a bursary. And a bursary or a grant is different to your student loan in that you don't have to pay it back. That's just money that will be given to you by the university and it's not expected back at any point. You'll also, so a lot of that support is provided across the university, but you'll also find that there will be particular sorts of financial support available to you in your college. And at Worcester, we offer bursaries for different kinds of things. We often offer bursaries for travel. We often offer bursaries to purchase books and materials. We've also done a lot of thinking this year about how the coronavirus will affect what our students need to be able to afford. So we've been sort of setting funding aside for people who might need to buy, let's say, headphones because they might need to listen to some of their lectures online if they were to be unwell, let's say. So we've really thought about what our students are going to need to be able to do financially and thought about how we're going to help them through that. And your college will also provide what we call financial aid. So that means that if you're sort of getting to the end of the month and you're worried about money, you can often make an application for your college to give you the money to sort of get you through whatever the particular stressful situation is that has resulted in you not having the money you needed to do something specific, for instance. Colleges provide that kind of financial support to you. So is Oxford the right place for you? So we've talked a little bit about what kind of a place Oxford is, but you're probably thinking about that in a much more personal way. You're probably thinking, well, do I want to go, right? Is this a place where I want to study? And I think you need to ask yourself a number of questions. And the first, and by far the most important question to ask yourself is, do you love one of our courses? Is there a course that really, really speaks to you as an individual? And when I say you, I don't mean speaks to your parent or speaks to your teacher or someone else is telling you that they think that they might find it interesting or that they think that a really stable career will come of it or something. The real reason to choose to do a course at university is that you are really, really interested and passionate about learning more about that subject. Yeah, that's the most important thing. And your course choice is much more important than anything else because 3 years or 4 years, if it's a 4-year course, is a long time to do something if you don't really want to do it. So you need to really think about that course choice. That's really important. And there's loads of information on the department's websites about the different courses. And we're going to be making some videos available today of our tutors in a number of our courses talking about what they like about the course. So they might be worth watching too if you're interested in thinking about different courses. Are you on target then? Second question you need to ask yourself, are you on target to meet our entrance requirements? Yeah, Oxford does have relatively exacting entry requirements. You will need for most courses to get 3 A's at A level or the equivalent to 3 A's at A level, depending on what system you're in. And a couple of the courses have slightly different requirements. So you do need to look specifically at the course requirement, at the requirements for the course that you want to do. But you do need to be on target to meet those entrance requirements. Do you like the idea of personalized and interactive tutorial teaching? I think this is a really important question because you might be someone who, when I described to you that tutorial system and I said, it's really about you as a learner, it's very personalized kind of teaching, it's a conversation, yeah, usually a conversation around a piece of work that you've done. It's about thinking in new ways, thinking in different ways about your subject. And you need to sort of ask yourself, do you like that idea? Because, you might be someone who sat there thinking, oh my goodness, that sounds like the worst thing in the world. I really don't want to be taught in that kind of interactive way. I don't want to have a conversation. I don't want to be sort of pushed to think in new ways about my subject. And that is absolutely fine if you don't want to do that. There are plenty of fantastic universities across this country and across the world who will teach you in a way that you'll never need to have a tutorial of that kind. It's something that's really special about the way that we teach. So it needs to be something that you like the idea of, right? It needs to be something that you think you're going to enjoy, most importantly. And then the last one of my 4 big questions to ask yourself then is, are you self-motivated? I think this is really important because wherever you study at university, you'll find that university is a much more kind of self-directed experience than school or sixth form college. So university is a place where, yes, of course, you'll have tutors who care really deeply about your academic development, care about how you're doing as a person. Of course, your tutors will care about that. But they won't be like your teachers are at school saying, do this now and then do that and then do this, do this in this particular way. It's a much more independent learning experience. So it will be on you to decide, for instance, when you're going to go to the library. Yeah, you might be given a reading list and a question to answer for your essay, but it'll be on you to think through when you're going to do that work, right? To structure your approach to it. That will be sort of left independently to you, with, of course, guidance from your tutors. So that means that you need to be somebody who is self-motivated. You need to be somebody who's going to be able to get yourself ready to go to the library in the morning, to go to the lab, to work on that experiment, to do whatever it is that you need to do to get that work done. And I think self-motivation is often a combination of things, right? It's not some kind of magical quality that you either just have or you don't have. It's a combination of curiosity, yeah? And I think that's why I always, whenever I'm talking to people who are thinking about going to university, I always try and make it really clear that your course choice is really important. It's got to be something that you're curious about. I often say that it's got to be something that you sort of can't stop reading about, right? You want to know more and more and more about this subject. That's the kind of curiosity that's going to make you a really, really good undergraduate student. Are you committed to that subject? Yeah. Is it something that you have wanted to read more about? Have you Googled to find out what sorts of resources you could be looking at, what articles you could be reading, what podcasts you could be listening to, whether there's a documentary that you could watch about your subject? It's that kind of commitment that's really impressive to us, but also that will make you a really, really good undergraduate student. Are you hardworking, and are you determined to do this subject? So courses that you study at universities like Oxford are challenging. Yeah, the idea is to stretch you. They're not so challenging as to be impossible, absolutely not. And our students do have plenty of time to do other things around their academic work, but they are a challenge. You will be asked to think in different ways, in new ways about your subject. You will be involved in conversations with experts in that subject, and it'll be about discussion. Yeah, it'll be about thinking hard about those subjects and wanting to learn as much as you can about them. So being someone who is hardworking and who is determined to find out more about that subject, those are qualities that are really going to help you across those 3 or 4 years or longer if you're doing one of our longer degrees that you're studying that subject. Okay, so that's a little bit about what you might be looking for, what you might want to think about when you're thinking about university. What are we looking for then? Or to put it a different way, what are universities looking for when they're considering your application? And what I'm going to do is focus on the bit on the right hand side of the screen first. So what we're not looking for, yeah, because as I said, there are lots and lots of myths that surround applications to places like Oxford and Cambridge. And I just want to set a few of them straight. We're not looking for students who come from particular kinds of backgrounds or particular kinds of school types. We're not looking for students who have a particular set of experiences. There's no one way to show us that you're somebody who could really thrive at Oxford. That's something that we see in lots and lots of different ways in different kinds of students and applicants. We're also not that interested in irrelevant extracurricular activities. And what I mean by that is you might be, let's say, a really fantastic footballer. Yeah, just to take an example. Let's say you're really into football, and that's great for you. And of course, you know, your tutors and your friends at college will support you in your extracurricular activities, and they'll be happy for you. You know, when things go well in your kind of extracurricular life. But we're not interested in those activities in the admissions process, because you may well be a fantastic footballer, but that doesn't tell me a huge amount about how good you're going to be as a student of chemistry, for instance. Yeah. So often students will say, oh, but I really want to write about this particular achievement on my personal statement because it's really important to me. And I think I would advise them, first of all, to think about whether it's really relevant. Yeah, your personal statement, which is part of the application process, doesn't need to be a list of everything you've ever achieved. But if it is relevant or it is really important to you, you'll want to think about what particular kinds of skills it shows. It may be that something to do with those extracurricular activities that you've taken part in has taught you a skill that is going to be useful to you at degree level. But we don't want to know sort of absolutely everything you've ever done. And you don't need to be someone who's super accomplished in all these different things to thrive at Oxford. I think there used to be this perception that students who studied at Oxford University could all, as well as being fantastic at their subject, they could all speak 5 languages, and they all played on their county cricket team or whatever, and they all had grade 8 on the piano, or, you know, they were all these kinds of people who were accomplished in all these different ways. And of course that's not true. You know, of course you'll meet people at Oxford who really love the things they do, and those things might be related to their subject, but they might also be drama. They might also be volunteering for a charity, say. You know, you'll meet people who do those things to a really high level, but you don't need to be somebody who, you know, is really accomplished in all these irrelevant extracurricular things in order to thrive here. What are we looking for then? What is important to us? Well, academic ability and potential. And I would say that potential is much more important than academic ability. Yeah, you don't have to be somebody who's always had some kind of perfect academic record. In fact, a lot of our students are people who maybe they didn't do as well as they could have done, let's say at GCSE, but once they get towards A-levels, they start to really kick into gear. They decide what they want to do. And they start to really work. And then what we see is a kind of upward trajectory, right? We see that someone was kind of ticking along at school, and then they become interested in something, and then their engagement grows, right? And their ability to perform academically also grows. So that can also be a really convincing application. So you don't have to think that you need to have been perfect across the board. People often say to me, you know, what if I got this one really bad mark in something a long time ago? And often those things don't matter, because we all have one of those things. Yeah, none of us have ever been absolutely perfect all the time. So it's your potential that really, really matters. You will need to meet the subject requirements. So that means that you will have to achieve certain grades at A-level or at the equivalent to A-level, depending on what system you're in. Certain subjects will also require you to have studied certain subjects at A-level. So you'll have to have done a specific subject if you want to study some of our degrees. But then there are other degrees where you don't have to have done A-levels in any specific subject. So it's worth really reading on the university websites and making sure that you know what the subject requirements are. And you can also always drop us an email if you're not sure. You need to be somebody who's going to suit our learning and assessment style. So that's going back to what I said about those tutorials. Are you going to be someone who is interested in learning in that kind of discussion? So it's worth you having a read also about how your course is assessed. You know, when do the exams take place? What kind of exams will it be? And are you somebody who's really going to do well in that kind of system? The most important thing, though, more important than anything else, is that you have a genuine interest in your subject. Yeah, that you're someone who really, really wants to learn more about this, and that it's really genuine. You're not doing it because a teacher has told you to do it, a family friend has told you to do it, you know, somebody else in your life has told you that this might be a good idea. It needs to be the subject itself that really, really interests you. You need to be someone who kind of can't stop thinking about this subject, you know, can't stop reading about it, listening to things about it, wanting to know more about that subject that you want to study at degree level. Okay, so let's think a little bit about what your life might be like. And I should say that I'm focusing here on your academic life. You will also have lots and lots of time to socialize with your friends, to relax, to take part in whatever extracurricular activities you're interested in taking part in. The best people to ask about that are our students. So if you are watching this video because you're visiting us on the virtual open day, then it's really worth hopping over to the student web chat to have a conversation with them about what they do outside of their studies, and you know, how they manage their kind of work-life balance, because you'll find that they all do a lot more outside of their studies than you might think, as well as a lot more relaxing than you might think, right? They don't, all of them spend their time producing musicals, let's say. I'm sure they also will tell you that they watch a fair amount of Netflix and play a fair amount of computer games and chat and go out and drink tea in each other's rooms, and you know, do a fair amount of normal life too. So let's start with the sciences, then I'll come to the humanities in a second. So this is a kind of a typical week. Yeah, so you should expect to spend you know, around 35 hours doing your work. So that's kind of roughly equivalent to a full-time job. You might go to around 10 lectures a week. So on the whole, the science subjects, the science students attend more lectures than the humanities students do, because the way that things are taught is slightly different. You might spend between half and a day in labs, and you might have between 1 to 2 hours of tutorials. So that's those kind of small group teaching settings. And those will be tutorials or classes, so they could also be slightly larger, on problems that you have been set to solve. So you'll be set something in advance to work through. And you'll also be doing project work. You also will do a fair amount of independent study, right? So if you add up those numbers in that list there, you'll see that they don't make up 35. And the reason they don't make up 35 is because university study involves a fair amount of independent study. So that's time that you spend preparing the work. That might be time spent in the library. It's time that you spend doing the work that makes you really able to make the most out of those contact hours. And in the humanities, it's a similar amount of work in total, but the way that it breaks down over the different kinds of teaching is slightly different. You'll go to a smaller number of lectures than your scientist colleagues. Most of them are optional, but we do obviously recommend that you go to them, and your tutors will often make recommendations to you of which particular lectures you should go to at which times. You'll have between 1 and 2 tutorials a week, and you'll usually write an essay for those tutorials. So that will be an essay that you prepare in advance. And you'll also have between sort of 1 and 2 seminars or group classes. So that might be on particular texts, it might be language classes if you're doing a language subject. But like your scientist colleagues, you'll also spend a fair amount of your time on preparatory reading and independent study. You'll do that usually in a library. You can see our library at Worcester there on the left. That's the old library. We also have at Worcester a 24-hour library and a specific law library. So you should expect to spend a fair amount of time in those libraries, or taking the books out and reading them in your room if you prefer, or in a cafe or in another study space. But you should expect to spend a fair amount of your time studying independently, doing the preparatory work for your tutorials, your seminars, your classes, for instance. Independent study, I'm just gonna insist on this point for a minute. Independent study is a really important part of any university degree, right? So it's important that you're someone who wants to do this for yourself, yeah, wants to do that reading, is really interested in the subject that you want to do. And when I say interested in the subject that you want to do, I really do mean the subject, as in what you're going to study. So lots of people think that they have to do a particular subject because it will lead them to a certain career. And for some careers, that's true, right? If you want to be a doctor, you're going to need a medicine degree. But for most careers, it's not true, because most degrees can lead to most professions, right? So it's not the case for most jobs that you need a specific degree. What employers are most interested in is the skills that you learn in a really wide variety of degrees. So, you know, across all of our degrees at Oxford, you'll learn, for instance, the ability to handle complex arguments, difficult arguments, technical arguments, to be analytical and to be precise, right? And that's something that, you know, is a skill that you can apply in a whole load of different kinds of professions. You'll learn how to understand huge amounts of information, yeah? To synthesize information, to organize your knowledge into arguments that are logical, yeah? To make sensible observations. And again, you know, this kind of adaptive thinking, this kind of nuanced thinking, thinking that's flexible, thinking that's also independent, right? Being able to react to information and think for yourself. Those are skills that you really hone in a tutorial system, right? Being able to think on your feet, to be adaptable, to respond to new information in an intelligent way, in a sensible way, in an analytical way. And those are skills that employers, regardless of which job you want to go on and do, employers will look for those skills for a whole variety of different kinds of professions. So you'll find that Oxford graduates are often, you know, relatively in demand with employers, and it's for these specific reasons. It's these skills that they're interested in. And the other thing that this kind of busy university degree will give you is the ability to manage a challenging schedule. And it's hard to kind of overstate the importance of that when you move into the world of employment, right? Being able to manage your time in a way that is sensible and productive, and produces your best work. And that's something that you will learn, you know, very quickly, and will support you in learning very quickly when you arrive at university. Okay, so you've heard me mention different parts of the university, right? You've heard me talk about colleges, about departments, and about the university more generally. And sometimes people find that a little bit confusing. But basically, you're a student at the University of Oxford in three key ways, yeah? You're a student at the university. It's the university that admits you, and it's the university that will give you your degree at the end. Everybody, regardless of what college they go to, will get a degree from the University of Oxford. You're also a student at a department. So that's your kind of subject-specific home, as it were. It's your department that will organize, for instance, your exams. They'll also organize your larger group teaching, like your lectures and some of your seminars as well. And then you're a student at a college. So a college, as I said, is that kind of community. You can see there on the picture, that's when you first walk into Worcester College. If you'd been sort of with us physically in Worcester today, you would have seen sort of the desk that we set up to welcome you. And that's your kind of, under those arches is your kind of first way in to Worcester College. So your college is your physical home. You'll often live there. But it's also your academic community, your social community. It's the college that will arrange your tutorial teaching. So there are tutors based in the college, and you will be taught by those tutors. You'll also be taught by specialists at other colleges. So you don't necessarily need to apply to the college that has a specialist in the subject, the bit of the subject that you're most interested in, because it's likely that if there isn't a specialist in the topic that you're going to study in the college, it's likely that you'll be sent to a different college to have a tutorial with a tutor who's an expert in that subject. Colleges take a responsibility for your academic progress. Yeah, so there'll be tutors and other people who are responsible for your development, both academically and personally. Yeah, your college will also be where a lot of your welfare support is provided. They are often very close and very friendly communities. I'm sure that our students will tell you that about Worcester, that it's a very kind of friendly vibe. It's kind of like a sort of college family. You do often live in college. And at Worcester, as I said, you can live in college usually for all 3 years of your degree. But it's much more than a hall of residence, right? It's not just your bedroom that you stay in. There'll also be somewhere where you eat. Your library will be there. A lot of your social activities will be there. There are also a number of different societies. So at Worcester, we have societies for lots of different kinds of sports, for music, for drama, for journalism. We also have a chapel and a multi-faith prayer room. So there are also kind of faith-based societies that meet within Worcester. So this is really your kind of social hub, right? And it's where a lot of your kind of activities will take place. Your department then provides a lot of the facilities that you need to do your degree. So by that, I often mean laboratories, I mean lecture theatres where your lectures will take place, libraries, there are often departmental libraries as well. It's where the kind of specialist resources for doing your subject are found. It also sets the course curriculum, so all courses, wherever you study, whichever college you choose to study, let's say biology at, you're all studying the same curriculum across the different colleges because it's the department that sets what is studied on each degree. And they'll also organize your final exams. Yeah, so it's your kind of, your subject specific kind of organization is done by the department. Okay, so how do you choose a college then? You've heard me talk about how important colleges are. You've heard me say that colleges are a social community, they're an academic community, they offer resources, there are libraries, there are dining halls, they offer things like subsidized food and social activities. But how do you go about choosing one? Well, the first thing I want to say is that your college choice is by far not the most important choice that you will make as part of this process. People often worry too much about colleges, I think, when actually the most important thing is to decide on the course that you want to study. And then, you know, think about what your college preferences might be. You know, if there's something specific that you need from a college, if you want to have, let's say, your sports fields on site, you want to have a gym on site, you want to have a prayer room on site, you want to live somewhere where the majority of the bedrooms are en suite, for instance. All those are reasons to think about choosing a college. So it's worth looking into those things. But I also need to say that a number of students every year will end up at a college that they did not apply to. So there are lots of systems in place to ensure that the admissions process is fair, where you will often end up interviewed at and sometimes offered a place at a college that you have not applied to. And, you know, on the whole, students end up feeling a huge amount of affection for whichever college they end up at. So it's really not something to overly worry about. But it, you know, it may nonetheless be something that you want to think about. So I'm going to show my biases here, yeah, and I'm going to tell you why we think you might want to think about Worcester College. So I've just put on the screen here a kind of aerial map, and you can see that all of that kind of big green area, yeah, that you can see on the bottom left, all of that is Worcester College. So you're looking at sort of huge grounds. You can see just about from this picture that we have a lake on site as well. Really, really beautiful grounds that are really well looked after and provide this really nice green oasis in the middle of the city, because as you can see from this picture, we are also really well situated for all of the things that you might need to study in the city, right? So we are kind of a sort of green space at the heart of the city of Oxford. So location is one of the things that you might want to consider, but you know, things like the grounds of the college, whether you want to be somewhere with a lot of green space, for instance, that might be something for you to think about as well. You'll want to think about what facilities are on offer. You can see from this picture that we at Worcester are really lucky to have our sports grounds on site. You can see some tennis pitches there as well, and some cricket pitches. So we're really set up for doing kind of sports activities outside. We also have a college gym, and that building that you can see there next to the sports pitches is what we call the Sultan Nasreen Shah Centre. And it's a centre that has a huge lecture theatre in it, but it also has a dance studio that we also use for things like yoga. And students can use it for rehearsals, for performances and things like that too. You can see some of our accommodation buildings there. I've already said that we have a really, really good dining hall on site. We have a chapel, and we also have a multi-faith prayer room. We have a number of different kinds of music societies, loads and loads of different kinds of student societies. So it's a really kind of thriving place full of lots of different kinds of people who want to do different kinds of things, and find, once they get to Worcester, the people who want to do those activities with them. You might want to think about resources. I've already talked a little bit about the kinds of financial support that some colleges provide, but we also provide that support in terms of a welfare team. We have a dedicated student welfare officer, and I'll talk a little bit more about welfare in a minute, but we're really kind of set up to help you through that transition to university life, and also to kind of be on hand to support you with anything in particular that you need support with. People are really important to the college, yeah, because I've already said your college is often your kind of first group of friends. So people often describe when they come to Oxford for an open day, and I know this is a bit different for you because this year you haven't been able to come to, or at least you haven't been able to come in person to a physical open day, but people often describe feeling that the college was friendly when they walked in. Yeah, they felt that the students had good relationships with each other. They felt that the staff really cared about the students. And I'm going to leave it to our students to talk about that with you. But I think you'll find that what they'll say is that whatever background they're from, whatever it is that they're particularly interested in doing, they feel welcome. They feel like they can thrive at Worcester. They feel like they can, relatively easily make friends, and that the staff are on hand to support them. At the bottom of this list of things you might be thinking about when you're thinking about choosing a college is statistics. And a lot of people, when they're thinking about applying to somewhere like Oxford, they try and play a kind of statistics game, right? They think, well, I don't want to apply to a college that's really popular because if lots of people apply there, then I'll have less of a chance of getting in. And in fact, it doesn't work that way, because what happens is that there are a whole load of different systems in place that mean that applicants are sort of fairly evenly shared out between the colleges, so that it's not the case that if loads and loads of people apply to one college, that means that the people who apply to that college are less likely to get in or to get a place at the university. And it would be hugely unfair, right, if that was the way that it worked. So it doesn't work like that. You often will be interviewed at a college that you didn't express a preference for on your form, and all of that is part of that system of making sure that it isn't the case that certain colleges are just overwhelmed with applications. And for a number of years at Worcester, it's been the case that we had the highest number of applications to the college, but it also happened to be the case that the students or the applicants who applied to us were also more likely to get a place across the university as a whole. So don't worry too much about thinking, oh, if lots of people apply there, then I'm less likely to get in, because it in fact doesn't work that way. And sometimes it can even be the opposite. So those kinds of statistical games are really not a good reason to choose a college. I think it's much more important to think about what sorts of facilities are available. Do I feel like this is a place for me where I'm going to feel welcome? Yeah, am I going to be able to live the kind of life that I want to live for 3 or 4 years in that environment? I think that's the important question. So some more nice pictures of Worcester on this slide here. We are really centrally located. In fact, one of the things I love about Open Day and I'm sort of most sad about this year is that as you all, when you're visiting the city, as you all walk up from the train station or from the bus station, depending on how you've come in, you will walk straight past Worcester. So we often are the kind of first faces that you'll see on your open day. So we often see everybody sort of clutching their coffee cups in the morning and turning their maps around and upside down and trying to find their way around the city. So we often get to be the people who will point you in the direction of the department or wherever it is that you're planning on heading to first. So we'll miss that this year. We'll miss being able to be your sort of first stop on the trail. But nonetheless, it's important to think about where we are in the city, we're really, really close to the train station, to the bus station. So our students find it really easy to get home if they need to, or, you know, when it's the end of term and they're going back to see their families, that's really sort of easy to do from Worcester. So we're really well connected in that sense. We're also off the main tourist trail. So we are kind of really centrally located in the city, but we're not in that kind of main central square bit of the city where you often get huge numbers of tourists wanting to look around colleges and things like that. So we tend to be slightly quieter, slightly more peaceful environment, even though we're in the center of the city. So we're quite lucky in that sense. The other sense in which we're really, really lucky at Worcester is our grounds. We have grounds that are about 26 acres. There's a lake, there's an orchard, there's various bits of parkland. I have been really excitably this year following the birth of our baby cygnets, our pair of swans. I've had some babies and I've been sort of watching them as they hatched and grew up on the lake. You probably aren't all as obsessed with bird watching as I am, but it was lovely, and it was a real testament, I think, to how well this environment and this 26 acres of beautiful grounds is looked after, that we have so much wildlife and so much green space to relax in, right? Because you know, studying at any highly selective university is a relatively intense experience. So having that space to be able to go for a walk, to be able to meet with friends, to be able to sit in the sun, you know, and eat your lunch on the grass or whatever, those things can be a really important part of your experience. We also are a college that ranges from medieval to modern in its architecture. You can see on that picture at the top of this slide, one of the oldest bits of the college. So that's the medieval cottages, where some of your tutorials will happen. So some of our lecturers' offices are in that building there. But we also have buildings that sort of range all the way up to the really modern bits of the college that you'll have seen on some of the other pictures. So there's kind of something for everyone in terms of the architecture of the college, if that's something that appeals to you. Different kinds of facilities that we have on site. I love this picture on the right here, which is the kind of spiral staircase that goes up to our old library, which you saw a picture of earlier in the presentation, and our 24-hour library space as well. Just a really kind of beautiful old bit of the college. But we also are really well set up to do the kinds of activities that you might want to do. So we're really lucky to have our playing fields on site, cricket pitches, tennis courts, things like that our students will often make full use of. It's worth saying, by the way, that often when people think about university sport, they think about things like being an Oxford Blue and all of this kind of super competitive university sport. And of course there is really competitive, really high level sport at university, but there's also a lot of social sport, right? There's also a lot of people who have never played a sport before in their lives, but they decide that they want to keep fit when they get to university. So they join a kind of casual football kickabout team, or they join a running club, or they decide just to go along with their friends to whatever it is that they're doing. So you can also pick up brand new things that you've never thought about, and often that you've actually never heard of before. There are all kinds of sports that exist at university that I hadn't heard of before. So you can pick up new things at university as well. You don't have to imagine that you have to be really good at everything you're going to do. We have a really beautiful new lecture theatre that we also use as a kind of performance space. So it's also used for things like poetry readings, for performances. We have a drama studio that's also used as a kind of dance rehearsal space, as a space to do yoga, as a sort of quiet space. We use it for all different kinds of things, but that's a really kind of beautiful new space, and it looks out over, it has these amazing, you would have seen it if you had been able to be here with us today, but it has this huge kind of window at one end, and it looks out over the water that goes into the lake, and it's really, really beautiful. There's also a college bar and a cafe, as well as a dining hall. So you'll find that the meals in the dining hall are really good quality. They're also relatively cheap because they're subsidized. But there's also lots of options for kind of more casual food. So we have a cafe where you can sort of grab paninis and sandwiches and coffees and things like that if you don't really feel like going in to a dining hall that day. And there's also a college bar as well. And we also offer accommodation for the 3 years of your degree. So that's something that some colleges do and some colleges don't. So if it's important to you to be able to live in for the whole of your degree, then that's something that is worth looking out for. We also have all of the resources that you would need to be able to do your degree to a really high level. Kind of academic support is something that really matters to us. We want all of you to be able to thrive on your degrees. We have a really well-stocked modern library, and also a really beautiful historic old library, which you saw a picture of earlier in the presentation, that sort of looks out over the quad, the kind of main entrance that you come into. That's really, really beautiful. We have a specialist library for law as well. And then in terms of living in the college, or kind of general life, the food that we have in our dining hall is always really highly rated by our students. It's really fantastic food. We're really lucky to have the team that we have. We also have a chapel. You can see a picture of the chapel there. That has a really active chapel society and a choir, and we have a multi-faith prayer room as well, so we cater for all different kinds of religious beliefs, faiths, and also none. There are plenty of our students who have no faith. We have a college drama society that has annual productions that take place in our grounds, and we also have different kinds of music societies, bands, groups, sports teams at lots of different levels, and writing and journalism societies as well. So, I mean, I've just, that's a kind of potted list of things that go on at Worcester, but whatever it is that you want to do, you'll find that, you know, there are people who want to do those things with you, both at college level and across the university as well. Support. I think this is something that people often think about when they're thinking about university, perhaps more now than they did do even a couple of years ago, because it's really important that you study somewhere that is really going to support you, yeah, both in terms of your academic studies, but also in terms of financial support. You don't want to be to have to worry overly about money while you're at university, but also that's going to support you as a person, yeah, somewhere where you're going to feel welcome, you're going to feel safe, you're going to feel like there are people around you who support you and who you can get on really well with. And we think that that's something that we really care about at Worcester, and it's something that we work really hard on. So we have a welfare team that involves the dean, the specific student welfare officer, college doctors, the college nurse, specific welfare representatives among our undergraduate body as well, who are trained in supporting their peers. We've also thought really hard about what kinds of financial support you might need. So we've thought about money that you might need if you're going to travel somewhere, that you might need to buy specific books. And we also offer hardship support, so that's money that is given to you if you're in some kind of financial difficulty that is affecting your studies. So that's something that we care a lot about. We also are really lucky in that our JCR, so that's our undergraduate student body, is a really diverse group of students. It's a really caring group of students. It's a group of students who really work hard to support each other and to be there for each other, and also to create an environment where, you know, people are not left out, where everybody can be involved in some part of college life. So that's something that's really important to us as a college. The most important thing for me, though, about a college is the people in it. Yeah, a college is really nothing without its people, and by people I mean both its students, its undergraduate and its graduate students. And you can see there, it's just a picture of some of our previous JCR presidents. So the presidents of the undergraduate body, that word JCR just means Junior Common Room, which is the organization of students as well as their own social space. So we've just put our smiley presidents up here, but you know, I think the point that I'm making is that the people are really what make a college, and we're really lucky with our people at Worcester that we've managed to create an environment where people from a whole range of different backgrounds can come together, can be really well supported. It's a really friendly environment. And that's something that is the result both of an undergraduate body who are really interested in inclusion, are really interested in making everybody feel equally welcomed and supported, but also a group of staff who are really committed to the academic development and also the welfare of our students. So I'm going to stop there. There's a whole lot more that I could say about Worcester, about Oxford, about different kinds of degrees. If you have any questions, if you're joining us, if you're watching this presentation as part of the virtual open day, then I'm going to be sitting at my laptop answering your questions on the web chat over the next little while, so you're very welcome to join us there. If you're catching up on this presentation after the virtual open day and you're watching it, let's say on our college YouTube channel, then I won't obviously be at the web chat because I'll be doing the rest of my job. But you are very, very welcome to get in touch with us by email. Our email is admissions@worc.ox.ac.uk. That will come through to my colleague Claire, who's our Admissions and Access Officer, who can answer any questions that you've got. We can also put you in touch with people across the university who can answer your questions if we can't answer them. So please, don't feel worried about doing that. Please do get in touch with us and let us know of any questions that you've got. We'd really love to hear from you and to answer them. Well, thank you for watching this. Good luck with all of your applications, and I hope to see you really soon. Bye.